applications that have been out there for a while. This is a decision made by Apple to control and lock in the market. It is not something forced upon them by the technology. It's not even something forced upon them by the music industry in an attempt to limit what they call piracy. What's going on there? Why are we making these choices? And how are those choices then influenced by the response that emerges to those very choices? Because the great cycle means that what we think about what technology does drives its future development. We, the users and the audience, find cool stuff the developers didn't imagine, and they learn from it. William Gibson said the street finds its own use for technology, but of course Jonathan Ive is watching our every moment, and he can build our dreams for us before we wake, instead of just whinging on about a bird in the sleeve of a flying jacket, for those of you who read Pattern Recognition recently. That's Gibson on the left, and Ive with his nemesis on the right. We get annoyed at the limitations and the constraints, and other people realise how to build newer and sometimes better products that do not have those constraints. We see innovation and production and consumption in a perpetual feedback loop. It is not the circle of life, it's the circle of meaning. And it is not something that is new. It's how agriculture and literacy and steam and the mass media grew and developed. It is an old pattern. What is new is that it's happening now within a framework of post-industrial capitalism that forces certain decision frameworks onto the process. For example, there was no wireless iPod until now, not because it wasn't technically possible, but because Steve Jobs had not figured out a way to lock people into the technology and ensure that Apple remained in control of the process. He believes that the iPod Touch and the deal with Starbucks will do that for him, and he may very well be right. Now, all of these choices have consequences. They have consequences in the form of the sorts of technology we have available to us and the usage we make of them. And the technologies shift society. The way we live shifts as a result of this technical innovation. The mobile phone gives us a degree of flexibility in our daily lives we have not currently had. We have not previously had. Not even the greatest and most powerful monarch in history had the freedom of a Western, affluent, educated girl out on a Saturday night with a mobile phone in her mates. The freedom of choice, the freedom to do what she wanted. These technologies and our uses of them are starting to change the nature of our wider society. The things that technology makes possible, the affordances of the technology, are having an impact as great as the impact that the telephone had back in the 19th century, that the steam train had back in the 20th and 19th century. Businesses now rely on these technologies for their models, that's true. We rely on these technologies for the forms of life that we increasingly want to live, and those forms of life are increasingly satisfactory. And in many ways, good. And these changes have happened at the same time as business and manufacturing processes have been transformed to give us, to an increasing extent, what we want when we want it. If you can fight your way through the awful prose of Thomas Friedman's The World is Flat, and just get over his terrible Germanese, there's actually an interesting message in there. It is repeated about 50 times, but there is at least one interesting message in there. Now, these changes to the economy and to the way business works matter for another reason. They matter because the way business operates and the way production is organised affects our lives in many, many different ways. And here we come back to Marx. It was about 150 years ago, Marx and Engels outlined an economic theory which claimed that the economic base of a society shaped what the rest of the society would be like. They believed that politics and culture, family structure, mass media, religion, everything else was part of a superstructure which sat on top of this economic base, and if the base shifted, as it did from feudalism to capitalism, so forms of life would shift as well. And they were right. The whole edifice of politics Marx built on top of that model was not necessarily being borne out in reality, but they were right about that, and it's one of those things that's obvious when we think about it. A feudal society is different from capitalist and this version of capitalism, the one that has come into existence in the last 10 years, is different from what was there before, and we are making different assumptions about how we engage with it and how we live in that world. Cultural structures are changing as the underlying economy shifts, and we can start to observe that. We can see it in small ways, in the importance of the network to politics this time around. The 2008 election, indeed all the primaries, will be fought online. We know that. But this year's Dutch election was shifted. The result was influenced by online information about minority parties, which encouraged more people to vote for them and forced a coalition. We're already seeing real-world impact of these technologies. Away from politics, we're inventing new forms of artistic and cultural expression. My 14-year-old son is a big fan of this, red versus blue, the Halo mashup. In my house, we cannot wait for next Wednesday. Halo 3? Yes. We make machinima and mashups and video clips and blogs, and soon we're going to find ways to curate and present and sell them as we do with every other form of artistic expression. These are for sale on Xbox Live. He pays for them with Xbox Microsoft points, which he gets from my credit card. In some sort of strange osmosis, my money goes to Microsoft. I don't even realise it's happening. It's a brilliant model. Participative media and citizen journalism and blogging and self-publishing, social networking, they all mark the point at which the social structures of the second half of the 20th century, the ones on which we built our ideas of what it might mean to be happy and organised, break down and new relationships emerge. And companies like Dell, who do so well with the new manufacturing, also have to accommodate to Dell Hell and bloggers like Jeff Jarvis and others, criticising their every move and forcing them to completely rethink the way they interact with their customers as well as the way they have interacted with their suppliers. Because the knife cuts both ways. Every media outlet is turning to its former audience and trying to find new ways to include and embrace the people, hoping they can turn participation into money. Some may even succeed. Arguing making money online, the Telegraph is increasing readership. Others seem to have passed the point of no return. I suspect that most, certainly regional US newspapers, are rather like Macbeth. They are in steps so far that should I wait no more, returning were as tedious as to go early. They can't go backwards and they can't go forwards, and they will just go under. History doesn't end if the army was wrong. Rich, but wrong. Eras end, and between 2000 and 2006, we saw the end of the post-war era and the first flowering of the network world. And we are, some of us, unhappy in it because we are still figuring out what it might mean and how we are going to live in this space we have defined. Because we can't control or predict the ways in which the social, cultural and political superstructure is going to shift as a result of Marx's new revolution. We might see a new enlightenment. We might see the emergence of a new world religion based on the chip instead of the book. Will we continue to believe that getting every one of the world's 6 billion human inhabitants online is a good thing? Or will the developed world and a few fast-developing nations shaft Africa yet again? Will we learn that techno-determinist predictions and planning are useful, embrace discourse analysis, and the other methods that prove valuable in understanding human society and the psychology of groups? Maybe we'll finally replace religious impulse with a technophiliac belief system. We'll get rid of this heaven and replace it with this heaven. Salvation in a packet-switched universe where the time to live is always set to forever. I like it as well. For most of us in the West, most of the time, however, the key difference between then and now will be how much it is all taken for granted. How technology vanishes from view, and it is the role of design